Hello, this is FC PopCorn, a Film Companion original podcast. I am Prathyush, a writer and critic at Film Companion, and today I have with me the founder and editor of Film Companion, Anupama Chopra, and the streaming star of Film Companion, Suchin Mehrotra. And today we are going to be talking about the man, the legend, the one and only,
the myth,
the rock star,
Salman Khan. So I want to start with both of you. What do you make of Salman Khan, not just the actor, but the personality, the myth, the personality and the actor coming together?
So can I just start with stories?
Yes, please.
Because I have now interacted with him as a professional for 30 years, right? My earliest memory is, this was like early 90s. There's a legendary, she passed a couple of years ago, American photographer named Mary Ellen Mark, who was coming to India for Premiere Magazine to photograph Bollywood stars, okay? And I was the flunky on that shoot. I was the one who got to kind of line up the stars and run around and do all of this. And she really wanted Salman to be in it, okay? And that was my first interaction with him. And I called him, and I can't remember like how I got through or who the manager was or whatever it was. I don't even think I spoke to him. I remember, I think just the manager said that he doesn't want to pose, but he's deeply interested in photography and would like to assist her.
Okay.
Yeah. So this man has been a mystery for 3 decades.
And this was before the Sanjay Leela Bhansali films, or was this?
This would be before the Sanjay Leela Bhansali
Right.
films, but he was already
Post Maine Pyar Kiya.
Post Maine Pyar Kiya. He was a massive star. Pre Hum Aapke Hain Kaun.
Okay.
So in those few early, like 92, 93 kind of era. So he's just been fascinating. I remember trying to get him to do an interview with me for India Today, where I worked for like 12 years. And I remember Lali Dhawan, David's wife, had sort of played mediator and set up this appointment where I got to go and try and sort of woo him to doing this interview. And it was amazing. We were sitting in this restaurant and he was eating tiramisus, just like one after another. Okay, just lines of tiramisus were just coming. And he said to me that I'm happy to do this interview, but you'll have to donate money. The magazine, not me personally, the magazine would have to donate money to his favorite charity. And I was like, listen, we don't pay for interviews. And he said, why? You're going to sell magazines because I'll be on the cover. I think you should spend some money to get that. And of course, so it never happened. But again, totally walking to the beat of his own drummer from day one. And it's been interesting. And of course, my favorite story is once when I used to do this show called The Front Row, and I was interviewing him for, I think the second Dabang. And he walked in, and so we used to shoot one show in English and one show in Hindi, back to back, right?
To get the masses and the classes.
The masses and the classes. And so one would go on Star World and one would go on Star Plus. And the Star World one, just the English one, was regular like this, sat around, chatted. And then for the Hindi one, the star had to walk into the set. For the English one, she was already sitting. So he walked in and he touched my feet. It was so funny that I kind of tried to regain my composure and not just break into hysterical laughter. And
how do you react?
Yeah.
That's like,
I was just like, what? Like, what are you doing? And he said, nahi, buzurgon ke pair chhone chahiye. And I laughed so hard. But he's fascinating. And he's a mystery. I have no clue how he operates.
Great. What about you?
speaking of mystery, something you said just clicked. I was reading a really old interview of his recently, which was like one of those very rare sort of exhaustive interviews he'd ever given. And he said that when he first joined the industry, he actually wanted to be a director.
Yes.
And then I couldn't help but think of what Salman Khan, the director, would be like. What would those films be? And I thought it was just such because you just couldn't.
But he's written.
Yeah.
He's
I think
written
Veer and one more thing.
scripts,
Chandramukhi.
Yeah. So it's just interesting to see because like we associate him so much with the star persona more than actor, at least for me, you think of the star first, and I just couldn't imagine that as a director. But the one thing I always think about with him is I always love, and we're obviously recording this before the Kisi ki Bhai, Kisi ki Jaan trailers drop, but I always love a Salman Khan trailer. I think it's because I love like masala movies. I love the big mainstream movie. More often than not, with his films, especially when they're of that genre, I'm not a fan. But the trailers are always so fun because it's just the promise of like pure swag. It's everything. It's all the fun you could have. And I always love the trailers and like what those movies could be. But obviously the reality is very different. And I was just thinking of sort of his track record because I think for the longest time, sort of the wanted kick phase, he obviously was the full testosterone masala stuff. Then there was that in-between phase when he did Sultan and Bajrangi, where it felt like, he'd made a calculated decision to do something more substantial. And I love those movies. And then recently, he's obviously pivoted back. And I kept thinking of what sort of the next sort of stage of his career is. And are we just going to get more of the big action stuff? The Salman Khan genre versus anything more than that?
Do you feel that he has sort of sunk into his personality to a point that he's not willing to project anymore? Because with Bajrangi Bhaijaan, it was a film where you were like, this is someone who's taking the craft seriously. And then you move into films like Race 3, where he's singing auto-tuned songs, he's composing his own stuff, he's bringing singers. There's no sense of someone attempting to do something different. Is that a fear? Are we having that? Because he had quite a few moments where he really swung his career. One of them was, of course, with Wanted, because he had come from a spate of flops, and then he really
that was his big comeback.
It was his big comeback, which was followed by Dabangg,
which I love.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Dabangg a little, because that is truly an iconic moment. Because suddenly you had, I hate this division, but it's what happened was true. The masses and the classes truly came together for a resounding commercial critical success. But so there was that one moment of swerve, and I am very afraid that Race 3 was that swerve, because he's moved into a territory where he realized he can just cobble together a film by the force of a finger snap, that it doesn't require effort, doesn't require craft. Is that a fear that we have?
That's not a film that ran.
Yeah.
So I don't know how him or the people around him could actually believe that you don't need effort.
Right.
Yeah. No. And I was just going to say that, is it that, or is it desperation for box office? Because, around that time, we had Radhe as well, which, if I'm not wrong, was a straight to streaming film. I think it came out.
It was.
Which to me is insane.
With a limited theatrical release.
Exactly. So
even Z5 was confused about that film.
Yeah, they did a pay-per-view thing. And to me, it's still insane that we had a Salman Khan film, not a cameo, like a full-blown film that was straight to streaming. But I just felt that there was a bit of, I really need success back. That is the sense I got from that time. So is it just that? I don't feel these films have, that much effort put in at all. But is it just, I really want to give the people what they want. And, I'll maybe take a risk. But I'd love to know how he makes these. I just love to be a fly on the wall in those narrations, because my favorite movies are the ones that use the Salman Khan myth in an interesting way, like a Sultan, like a Bajrangi, like, everything Kabir Khan has done with him. And so it's almost like sometimes he is willing to make something that's...
Right.
He is. So Sultan was directed by Ali
Abbas,
Abbas.
yeah.
Right. And I did a conversation with him where he talked about shooting that scene where Salman is looking at himself in the mirror. Right. It's a great scene where he's looking at his body and sort of coming to the realization that maybe I don't have it anymore. Maybe I'm not that man. And he said that he just kept putting off shooting that scene, again and again and again, because obviously it puts him in a state of such vulnerability. But to see him do that is what, for me, made that film. So I feel like the more, and it's completely what you said, Suchin, it is the myth of Salman. He's not transforming into someone else. You're never going into a movie and saying, who am I watching? No, and that's fine.
Right.
But with that myth, within that myth, do more.
Yeah.
I think that cameo in Pathaan was just stellar.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the one time I've screamed for Salman.
When that scarf comes down.
Yeah. When the scarf comes down. Where do you have a star whose bloody scarf has its own screams?
Right.
So the level of stardom is gargantuan. But my fear is what you said, Prathyush, that has become a trap rather than something that frees him to do better things. That's my fear.